Welcome everybody to the early tee time live stream. I am Hunter Vaness, aka Huntman10 on Twitter. We are presented tonight by Fantasy Points. As always, it's great to have you all here. Whether this is your first time listening for a major or you've been listening the whole time, I really appreciate everybody that spends even just a little bit of their night every Monday night with me to go over our favorite thing each week, PGA DFS. So be sure to use code VANESS22 when signing up for a subscription on Fantasy Points. Again, VANESS22, that's 2 N's and 2 S's. And I really look forward to breaking down the Country Club with you all this week, again, for the U.S. Open. So tonight, again, we're going to do a little course preview for the Country Club. It's located in Brookline, Massachusetts. We'll start there. We'll also break down all 18 holes. That's something that we're starting to add into this show. I'm really looking forward to that. I got something written down for each hole. I think this course is going to be really, really difficult, which I enjoy seeing. It's fun to see these players get tested a little bit. Don't get me wrong, I do love a good birdie fest, but it is fun to see high scores from time to time. We'll also look at key stats that will be important this week. I'll break down just a few of those. I'll highlight it a little bit. Of course, you can read that or read more in depth about it within my article each week on Fantasy Points. And then we'll look at tournament history, who has done well here and why. Why have they done well here? We'll talk about a couple of stats as well as some trends that we can look at maybe to target this year for some golfers that might do well at this year's U.S. Open. And then at the end, we'll talk about DFS targets. I highlighted a few again in my article on Fantasy Points. You can see that on Fantasy Points for free each and every week. Really enjoy, typing that up every week. Hopefully you can get something good out of that. There's a lot of different stuff to break down, even if, you might already know some of the stuff, but hopefully I can highlight, tournament history or there's just one piece in there that, will help you out each and every week. So let's talk about this course. This is the 122nd edition of the U.S. Open, which is quite a bit. If you think back, that goes all the way back to the 1880s, I believe, because they had to take a few away from COVID, I believe. Well, not COVID, I guess. That was just one. But World Wars, of course, interrupted the U.S. Opens a little bit. That was a little bit more of a priority back then, of course. We returned to the Country Club in Brookline, Massachusetts for the first time since 1988. This course was also used for the 1999 Ryder Cup, won by the United States. Go America. And the 2013 U.S. Amateur, which was won by Matthew Fitzpatrick, which you probably heard about over a month ago by now. So haven't really seen this course a lot over the last, couple of decades, really just twice in the last 35 years. I think I have my math right there. So not a whole lot of stats to go off of this week or course history that we can really look at. I think a lot of what I talked about in my article was, event history, who's performed well in U.S. Opens. They tend to set them up somewhat similarly each year, especially over the last few years. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But also looked at, some key stats that are important for a lot of difficult golf courses that we'll see are similar to what we'll see this week. So the Country Club was opened in 1882 and they added the golf course in 1893. The golf course was designed by club members and Willie Campbell. Reese Jones made further changes to the course in preparation of that 1988 U.S. Open, and Gil Hans made renovations in 2009 and 2013. Again, that's probably a name that sounds familiar to you by now because he made renovations on Southern Hills, which was the PGA Championship course, as well as he's going to make renovations to Colonial, which was the Charles Schwab. I know we've heard his name a couple other times as well. He just makes a lot of renovations to golf courses. He's not much of a redesign where you're completely changing holes and changing the layouts of the fairways, all that kind of stuff, changing where bunkers are positioned. He does more renovations to make them look like they're older forms, or at least give them a revamped look. So for example, it's kind of like turning a black and white movie into a 2000s colorful very beautiful movie, for example. So that's kind of what he does. He's made 2 different renovations, I believe 2009, 2013. I think he's still, I would assume he made some touches on this before they set it up for the U.S. Open as well. I'll have to double check on that. But, that's the club. I do think we need to talk about the Live Golf Series a little bit this week. I haven't really talked about it on the show much because I've been pretty skeptical. I can't say it about it the whole time. I don't know why, I guess, but I just have been very not much of a believer, I guess. But now, they're playing real golf. It's obviously a competitor now that the PGA Tour does need to consider. The reason we have to bring it up though is it's the first time, this week the U.S. Open that we'll see the PGA Tour, square off or clash against the Live Golf Series or Golf Tour, whatever you want to call it. Um, and, what is that going to look like? I have no clue. I know some of the press conferences were starting today. I haven't really looked at it too much. I've been just diving into this course a little bit, but it's going to be really interesting to me. I know, again, I've been so skeptical about it, but it's a legit tour now. Like we could see this, especially if they continue to let them play majors or in majors. We could see this, civil war or duel between the two tours quite often here, and I know it's going to be a big storyline over the next month or so. I'm really interested to see how it turns out. Um, Again, first tour event or really major that we've seen where we'll see again both tours clash together. Are the Saudi tour is going to be booed on the very first tee shot? I can imagine it'll happen at a U.S. Open, but you never know, I guess. We'll see if those Boston fans get kind of drunk during the week, of course, but it's going to be interesting. I have no clue what it'll look like. They've already been throwing jabs at each other, of course, with Rory, Rory saying what he did after his victory yesterday. Um, Charles Schwartzel won this last week. He took home the $4 million purse, but again, I haven't talked about it much on the show because it hasn't related to, or it hasn't been, it hasn't impacted any events, I guess, on a week by week basis. But of course, it's going to be, an impact this week. So is it going to motivate players? Is it going to be a distraction? Obviously, that's different for every player, but who knows? That's the next factor, I think. So that is kind of a little course preview, obviously an event preview, a little mini one there. We have to consider the Live Tour, of course, because we're not going to be seeing these guys too often, in other PGA Tour events. So as far as the course goes, again, it was designed by Willie Campbell in 1995. Reese Jones made renovations to it or redesigned it a little bit for the U.S. Open in 1988, and then Gil Hans again made renovations to it in 2009 and 2013. It is a par 70 track. We're going to see 4 par 3s, 12 par 4s, and only 2 par 5s this time. So it is back to that normal, par 70 scorecard. 3 of the par 3s measure over 192 yards, with the 4th playing only 131 yards. However, that par 3 could potentially be moved back a little bit or moved up, I guess. So it might not play 131 yards the entire time. It can even get as close to 100 yards, I believe. So it's going to be pretty short. We'll talk about that one a little bit later. 8 of the par 4s measure 450 to 510 yards, and then the 2 par 5s are not necessarily guaranteed birdies. Again, the par 5 14th hole measures a monstrous 619 yards. It's very long. It's also elevated. We'll talk about that one here in a little bit. The course measures 7,264 yards. It's going to be a much different test than the previous last 2 U.S. Opens. Both of those, Torrey Pines and Winged Foot, measured 200 to 300 yards longer than the Country Club, and they had large green complexes. And the rough was a little bit different too. When Bryson was very dominant in 2020, he was able to just bomb it off the tee. Didn't really matter where the ball went because the rough was the same length, whether you were 5 yards or 5 feet from the fairway or 15 yards, for example. It's going to be a little bit different here this week. The rough grass is going to be very long. It is 3 inches. It's going to be Kentucky bluegrass and ryegrass, a little mix of that. And it's going to get, worse the farther that you get away from the fairway. So you can't just completely take away accuracy off the tee. Of course, I do think distance will, provide an advantage. But you can't just be bombing it, kind of like what Bryson did way back when. The greens are really small, compared to the average PGA Tour course. Think similar to Pebble Beach, which was the smallest that's been used for, or the smallest green complexes for a major. This is actually, I believe, going to be the second smallest. Think of Pebble Beach, think of Harbor Town, for example. We've been seeing a lot of these smaller greens on tour over the last couple of months compared to the first couple months of the season. These small targets are surrounded by long, rough grass and deep sand bunkers that will definitely, creep into your mind when you're hitting that approach shot. Just about every green is surrounded by at least 2 to 3 bunkers, and of course, that long rough grass is all around the green. The difference between the rough here and at Southern Hills is at Southern Hills, the PGA Championship course, the ball could just run off 15 yards, for example, off the greens because the rough was pretty short actually around the greens. They wanted the balls to run off just Southern Hills, right? They had to play into the name a little bit, but a little bit different here. The rough's gonna be long, everywhere around the green. You've probably seen some of the videos. I think I retweeted one out last weekend of Guido who sent the first rough test. It's long. It's really hard to see the ball once he drops it in there. So you're gonna hear about that quite a bit. You really need to find the fairway. Which is not possible all the time, but golfers who are accurate will have an advantage as well. There's 82 sand bunkers. The rough, again, is 3 inches long. There are about 4 water hazards. I think only 3 of them or 3 holes with water hazards. I think 4 holes with water hazards. I think 3 of them will actually come into play. The other one's a little bit out there, but you never know. And then the greens, they're a mix of bent grass and POA. I believe POA has 70%, bent grass is about 30. The surfaces are a mix, again, of both of those. They'll play a little bit faster than your West Coast POA, which is where we typically see POA on those California courses, but it'll be, of course, faster than that. These greens are really small. You'll see 2-tiered greens from time to time on some of the holes, and they'll have a lot of slopes and undulations that will cause a lot of these balls to run off. There's a lot of false fronts that we'll see on this hole-by-hole breakdown here in a second. And, I just think, short game is going to be really important because these greens are really small. You're likely going to be missing them. Not everyone hits greens, 100% of the greens on an easy course where there's large greens, right? So I would assume GIR percentage is pretty low this week. We're definitely going to have to put an emphasis on short game. Let's break down these holes here. We'll start off with hole 1. I'm going to take a drink here quick. We are using this from the USGA or the US Open website. If you go to usopen.com, they have a great hole-by-hole breakdown. That's where we're using these pictures. You can also see a flyover video of a lot of the holes. That's where I'm getting some of the insights here. And I think they'll be updating the holes with specific stats as the tournament goes forward. So we'll see. It's kind of fun to compare each of the majors' apps and websites, how they do things differently. I don't really, know which one I enjoy more, I guess, but it's funny to compare which ones are the best. But again, we're using the usopen.com, course breakdown here as our pictures. Credit to them. So starting off with hole 1, the first hole is a par 4 dogleg left. It measures 488 yards. It has a wide fairway that narrows the farther away that you get from the tee. There's 2 bunkers on the left of the fairway, and there's long fescue on the right side there. Can't really see it quite in the picture here, but of course it is going to have a small green. We'll talk about that, of course, throughout this hole-by-hole breakdown. But it is a dogleg left. These first 4 holes are very difficult, in my opinion. We don't have birdie stats, bogey stats like we do from a week-to-week basis because we haven't played this course. PGA Tour hasn't played it since the 80s in the actual PGA Tour event. The other ones, again, were the Ryder Cup and the U.S. Amateur. So we don't have birdie stats to go off of, but I can just tell from the distance of these holes as well as just, the makeup of them, the setup, it's going to be very difficult through these first 4 holes. So don't be surprised to see, some ejections on the first 4 holes. So again, first hole, par 4, dogleg left, measuring 488 yards. Second hole is a long par 3. It measures 215 yards. And it's going to have a elevated green that's about 15 feet above the fairway, and it slopes from the back to the front. So it's going to really make distance control crucial here. There's quite a few bunkers around the green complex, as you can see in the picture there. It's a really nice picture. And there's rough grass that surrounds this tiny target. So I've been talking about it before. Look at how the rough grass really changes, really throughout the entire hole here. It gets, kind of short near the fairway up there. But, if you even miss this bunker on the bottom side of it here, that is going to be tough. Honestly, I'd rather hit the bunker than landing in that long rough there. So I do think sand save is going to be important this week. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But again, second hole, long par 3. It's one of the 4 par 3s. 3 of them measure over 190 yards. This one is the longest, I believe. It's 215. So moving on to the third hole, it is a par 4. This one plays 499 yards, so just a touch under 500. The hole will likely be one of the most difficult holes on the course, in my opinion. It starts with a blind tee shot downhill into a fairway that snakes back and forth, and you can see it in that picture there. Look how it just goes back and forth there. There's little narrow gaps there where some golfers will actually have an advantage if they can hit those gaps. The green is large relative to the other holes, and it has a pond that sits behind it if players crush their approach shots. So can't quite tell if you can see it in that picture there, but there is a pond also on the back side of the green. But this green is one of the larger ones in the entire course. So, that kind of makes up for the distance of the hole since it is a longer hole. Players will be able to, hit the center of the green and just try to two-putt for par here. But again, going to be a difficult one starting off again. 3 long par 3s. Here we go. Par 4s. Because with the fourth hole, it is a 493-yard par 4. It starts with an elevated tee box where players hit a blind tee shot once again into a dogleg right. So you're going to see a large 80-foot tall tree that blocks the view of the green, but the fairway is the widest on the course, and it creates a relatively easy landing zone for golfers. Again, another dogleg right this time. It does go back and forth here, but taking a look at these first 4 holes, we go par 4, 488 yards, par 3, 215 yards, par 4, 499, par 4, 493. So, don't be surprised if your guys are +3 or +4 through these first 4 holes. Obviously, that's not ideal, but it doesn't necessarily mean that their round is typically over. Hopefully the golfers know that too, because they're really going to have some mental toughness to get through that. But really difficult opening stretch here at the country club. The fifth hole is the shortest par 4 on the course. So we go from long par 4s to a very short one here at the fifth hole. This one measures 310 yards long. It is likely the first birdie opportunity on the front 9 for golfers, and expect many of them to actually keep driver on this hole, even though it's 310 yards. If you look at the green complex, again, I really advise you all to go to the U.S. Open website here and look at the flyover video so you can get a good idea of, the hole in its entirety. But the green complex is really guarded by bunkers, rough here. I expect actually golfers to just bomb it up there and not really care too much where it's at. There's not like water up there that's going to cost you a stroke by any means. Even if you landed in this bunker, you could still get up and down for a birdie, let alone, par at the worst case scenario. So I don't expect too many guys to actually lay up here. Yes, it is an option, but if you can bomb it all the way up to this green, there's a lot more reward potentially for you than there is risk, because there's not again, water or any major penalties here, just some, long rough, of course, and, some bunkers. But when you have 3 shots around the green to save par rather than 2, makes it a little bit easier to get it all the way up there. So short par 4 for the fifth hole there. Again, probably one of the first birdie opportunities for the golfers. Moving on to the 6th, this is another long par 3. It measures 192 yards long. It is the oldest hole on the course, and it presents a false front on a slightly elevated green. So again, you're going to hear me say a lot of these words quite often, some buzzwords this week. False front, elevated green, blind tee shot, long rough, comes into play on a lot of these holes. So same thing on the 6th here again. This is the oldest hole on the course. I think I mentioned that already, actually. But then again, it slopes from the front to the back of the green, which is a little bit different than the other holes. So it has a false front. So if you're short, it's going to fall off that elevated green. But then once you land on the front of it, it slopes from the front to the back. So again, a little bit different than what we've been seeing so far. It is the largest green on the course, so expect many to hit the center and potentially two-putt for par. The 7th hole is, again, a par 4. It measures 375 yards long. The fairway slopes from the right to the left, where large trees and rough grass can be found to the left of the fairway here. There are fairway bunkers to the right and deep sand bunkers surrounding both sides of the small green that slopes multiple directions this time. So you'll actually see, again, those bunkers that surround the greens. Those are going to be much deeper than your fairway bunkers. That's typical at most courses, of course. But, I think these greens are really going to be detrimental. You saw it at the PGA Championship. If you hit the bunkers there, that was more the sands issue there, or the sand, or an issue with the sand. But I think these bunkers are going to be really deep around the greens, so probably better than hitting the long rough, right? But still going to be detrimental. So again, a green that slopes multiple directions, par 4, measures 375 yards here, so a little bit shorter, could potentially still be a birdie opportunity. Hole 8, this is the first par 5 on the course here. It is the 8th hole. It measures 557 yards. A strong tee shot, could hit the downsloping fairway that you'll see here for, further advantage off the tee for golfers. The green is elevated about 30 feet from the fairway to one of the smallest greens on the course. So, 30 feet above the fairway is what I'm trying to say there. The fairway is rather wide, so I expect many players to actually have a birdie opportunity on this hole. A strong approach shot, could potentially see some eagles as well. So, if you have two really great shots here, you might be able to pick up a couple strokes on the field. I do think eagle is a possibility on this hole, especially compared to the other par 5, but you're going to need two really solid shots. Again, the fairway is wide, so, golfers should be able to bomb it off the tee again into this downsloping fairway. So expect to see some monstrous drives on this hole. But I think that second shot will be a little bit more difficult since the green is elevated about 30 feet above the fairway. The last hole on the front 9 is the 9th hole, of course. It is one of 4 holes on the course with a water hazard. This 427-yard par 4 features a pond on the right side of the fairway, about 310 yards from the tee box. However, that fairway slopes right into that pond, of course. So I don't expect many players to use driver here. The fairway is pretty narrow around that pond too. So, it's you're really risking it to get that extra distance there. It's going to leave about a 150-yard approach shot if you do lay up before the pond, which I do expect more golfers to do. It's not the most difficult approach shot into the green there, but you could get a really nice potential or a nice advantage, if you do use driver and, get in that little gap on the fairway. Again, it is a pretty narrow gap there. So, 150-yard approach shot to the bent grass and POA green that slopes from the back to the front this time. So 9th hole, again, going to have a water hazard that comes right in, to the right of the fairway, not in the middle of the fairway, but again, it's going to likely cause many players to lay up there. The back 9 starts with a 499-yard par 4. You're going to see an elevated tee shot that will force golfers to worry about that small creek this time, actually, that is placed about 350 yards in the fairway. So 350 yards is a long ways off the tee, right? But it is an elevated tee shot, so it's going to go that little bit extra distance. This green is defended by multiple bunkers on the left and lots of rough on the right. So I think this is also going to be a very difficult hole. I expect golfers to actually worry about that creek a little bit because, again, it is a long ways away, but with the elevated tee and the, little bit of a downslope on the fairway, you could potentially find trouble within that creek there. So I think this is going to be a pretty difficult hole because, again, you're going to have a long iron. If you're laying up there, it's not like you're going to bomb it past that fair or past the creek, in my opinion. It'll likely, reach it there with a roll off, I guess. So again, that is the 10th hole. It has a green that slopes from the back to the front right. Moving on to the 11th hole. This is the shortest hole on the course. Talked about it a little bit earlier. Again, it measures 131 yards from the back tee. However, there are multiple tee boxes that golfers will see throughout the weekend. So the shortest one might just be a little bit over 100 yards long. So again, 7,200 yards, 7,260 or 7,264 yards, is the distance of the course. But with as always with a lot of these courses, they're probably going to move those tee boxes throughout the week, so it's going to be even shorter than what we are expecting, in my opinion. Don't let the short distance of this hole fool you, though. The green is defended by 4 separate bunkers. You can see a few of them there on the right side there. There is also one in the front left, well, the back left of this picture. So, it is a really small green as well. It's a small target on this short hole. The undulations in the green move in all directions that really add to the potential difficulties of this hole. Again, it is short, but I don't think it's, guaranteed birdie hole by any means. You're really going to have to be accurate with your wedge likely, and not every golfer is. So some guys are really good with their long iron, some guys are good with their wedges, and they just don't really cross over between the two. So is it going to be a double bogey hole by any means? Definitely not, but I don't think it's going to be the easiest hole on the course. The 12th hole is a par 4. This one measures 475 yards long. The fairway narrows due to the bunkers on the right side, and it will give short hitters, a blind approach shot due to the slope in the fairway. This hole is going to have the second smallest green on the course, and it's going to be surrounded by long, rough grass and a couple of bunkers as well. Again, you can see it in these pictures on the US Open site here. Again, I really encourage you all to go to the site and click on the flyover video tab that's found right in the middle there to the top right. Moving on to the 13th hole, there's no fairway bunkers on this par 4 13th hole. So, staying in the fairway on this 440-yard hole is going to be crucial to success. The approach shot plays over a pond that shoots into a green on the Primrose course. Just a quick, fact check on that. They have 27 holes on this course, so there's 3 9-hole courses. Obviously, they have to use 2 of those for the 18 holes here, but they do have to use just a few of the holes or a few of the greens on the Primrose course. That's part of that, other 9 or the part of the 27 there. So you'll see them actually hit their approach shot over one of the greens on the original course, over one of the water hazards actually into this green here. That makes it a little bit unique compared to how this course is typically set up. So it does make this hole longer. It makes it more difficult as well. There is another blind tee shot on this hole and a large tree that defends the small green. You can see a lot of trees actually throughout this course, but there's a few specifically that are placed, very strategically around the green that will either, block your approach shot or at least get into your head a little bit, that I do think will actually impact play a bit. Let's move on to the 14th hole here. This is the longest hole on the course. It also presents a very interesting setup, in my opinion. The par 5 measures 619 yards long and plays, typically into the wind. The green is elevated 30 yards above the fairway, and it's located 150 yards away from the long, short grass. Any tee shot that isn't directly in the fairway will basically eliminate any thought of reaching the green in 2. And an errant approach shot will also put golfers into scramble, save par mode. The green has 2 different tiers, and it's also the second smallest on the course. So, long par 5. I know par 5s are typically birdie holes, but I think this one's more going to be a get par and move on. It's a really long par 5. You're basically going to have to be perfect to get up to the green. You're going to have to be nearly perfect to get a birdie here. I don't think we're really going to see any eagles unless you are just crushing it off the tee. But, since this is an elevated green, I don't really know. I don't think it's going to be the lowest scoring hole for a par 5. 15, this is the longest par 4 on the course. It measures 510 yards long. It starts with a blind downhill tee shot into a narrow fairway that's sliced in half by a cart path. The second largest green on the course neutralizes the distance of this hole quite a bit, as players will likely aim at the center of the green that slopes multiple directions here. So a lot of these have been from the back to the front, a couple of them from the front to the back. You're going to see a lot of slopes and undulations within this green. I think this is also going to be one of the more difficult holes on the course, not just because of the distance, but mainly because of the undulations in the green as well. Not really many penalties throughout this hole. Again, there is a cart path that slices the fairway in half, but with the long distance, of course, it can't be the most difficult with a billion different water hazards or bunkers throughout the hole. 16, this is a par 3 hole that measures 202 yards long. You will see multiple tee boxes that could move it up as much as 33 yards. So again, another par 3 that's starting at 202 yards long, but we might see it a little bit shorter as the week goes on. There's 4 bunkers that surround this green with, of course, long rough grass and deep bunkers, as you can see in the picture there. Probably going to be another difficult hole, a long par 3. Looks like the green, I didn't get a number on that one, but looks like it's rather large compared to the other ones. So, we could see some birdies here. It'll probably be one of those that's, parred at like a 75% rate. You see birdies 15%, bogeys 15%. A lot of people are just trying to save par and move on. Hole 17, this is a dogleg left. We're getting into the final 2 holes here. This hole measures 373 yards long, and it has a fairway that narrows more and more the closer that you get to the hole. The hole features the smallest green on the course, and it is also 2-tiered. You're going to see multiple undulations within this green as well. It slopes from the from the back to the front middle, and you'll see 5 bunkers that surround the green. So again, really going to want to look at sand save percentage. I don't really consider it a whole lot when I consider outright bets, because if you're missing the green, you're hitting the sand all the time, you're probably not going to be winning anyways, just because you're not very sharp with your irons that week. But when we see really high scores, for example, or when the winning score is potentially minus 10 or higher, I guess you could say, I do think sand save should be considered. So yeah, 5 bunkers here. Pretty tough hole here. Short par 4, but the dogleg left, it is going to have some things such as that. You can see the tree on the right side of the picture. There's just a lot of trees here, and a lot of big ones too, again, that impact a lot of these holes. The closing hole, the 18th hole, is a dogleg left, and this one features large sand bunkers to the left of the fairway to protect the dogleg. Distance control is going to be huge here. As you can see, the clubhouse is right behind the green. There's a cart path that comes. There's probably like a couple feet of rough that separates the green from the cart path, and then like the clubhouse back there. So I would assume there's going to be fans right by the green there. We'll see what that actually looks like on Sunday when when there's a lot of people there, of course. But distance control is going to be huge. It's going to be interesting to me to see if anyone really fires it on their approach shot and sails it over the screen. We'll see what it looks like, of course. So 451 yards. It is a par 4, has long rough and a big tree to the right of the green. I do think this one will be rather difficult as well. It's not the longest par 4, but there's just a few hazards here that will creep into players' minds, of course, as always. So that is your hole-by-hole breakdown of the country club here. Let's look at some stats, talk about some tournament history, and then we will get out of here. So really appreciate you all tuning in here tonight, of course. I really encourage you all to look at the hole-by-hole breakdown on the U.S. Open website. So now that we know what this course is going to look like, what do we think is going to be important this week, of course? So I think strokes gained off the tee is, of course, going to be really important. You look at previous U.S. Opens, a lot of the last 5 winners, which we'll highlight here in a second, have been strong drivers, strong players off the tee. So you can see this all in my article on fantasypoints.com, of course. I do think strokes gained off the tee and good drives gained. I kind of made a little combination of that. Again, you can see that in my article, as well as the top 5 players within that stat and some DFS values that will go along with it. As with most courses, strokes gained approach is going to be important. Green and regulation percentage, I can't talk here, is going to be important as well. Not everyone's going to hit the green, so strokes gained around the green. Scrambling percentage is going to be important. These greens are really tiny, so just like the narrow fairways, not everyone's going to hit the fairway every time. Not everyone's going to hit the green every time, even if you are the best iron player, such as JT or Morikawa, for example. He's not 100%. Every round. I don't know if anyone's ever. Of course, some people have, but I can't imagine Morikawa has been 100% for 4 rounds. So even the best iron players, are going to miss greens from time to time, and especially these greens. They're very small, and there's a lot of hazards that are going to creep into your mind that will likely cause you to go a little right of the green because there's a sand bunker to the left, or maybe there's really deep rough in the back, and maybe you will just not hit it as hard, for example, as you might have intended. So around the green is going to be important, as well as scrambling. Sand save percentage, I talked about that. Bogey avoidance, I do think, this is another course where bogey avoidance can be emphasized instead of birdie or better. And then strokes gained putting, I think like putting from 5 to 15 feet is going to be more important than 3-putt avoidance, right? Because these greens are really small. Most of your birdie opportunities are going to come from around that range, if not a little bit longer. A lot of your par save opportunities, or your scramble moments where you're chipping from around the green, you miss the hole by a couple inches, it rolls 5 to 10 feet past it, you're going to have a 5-10 foot or 5 to 10 footer to save par. So I do think that can be looked at rather than your 3-putt avoidance. So tournament history here, Jon Rahm, won his first major last year. He took down the rest of the field at 6 under par. He came back on that final day on Sunday to, beat out Louis Oosthuizen. He finished runner-up. He added to his top 5 finishes in majors last season. He did really well at the Open and the Masters as well, I believe. The U.S. Open was held at Torrey Pines, again, much longer course than what golfers will see at the Country Club. Again, that was last year. The rough was in typical U.S. Open shape, though, of course. The Kakayu grass, I think I have that right, measured 3 to 5 inches, depending on where the ball was. The last 5 winners of this tournament are Jon Rahm. He won at 6 under. Bryson DeChambeau also won at 6 under. Gary Woodland won at 13 under. Brooks Koepka won at 1 over par, and that came the year after he won at 16 under par when the USGA kind of made a little bit of changes to that course to make sure that 16 under par didn't quite happen the following year. So, with most major championships, there's you typically see the best players in the world win this event, kind of like what you saw in the last 5 years here. All these players were inside of the top 25 of the official world golf rankings. A lot of them had, top 10s heading into the event. A lot of them had wins even on the season before they played this. So I do think we're going to see a top player win this. As much as we love long shots, of course, I do think someone from that 40 to 50 to 1 or lower will win this event. As far as the field goes, talked about the process to get into the U.S. Open within my article. I'll let you read up on that. All the top players are in the field, of course, not just PGA Tour players, but also the Live Series or Golf Tour, whatever it's called. You can see a lot more of the field just by looking at DraftKings, but all the top players in the world. I don't think there's any major WDs or any players not playing. I know Paul Casey withdrew. Other than that, I don't think I've missed anything like that. If I'm missing something, you'll have to let me know. But since this event is played on different courses every single year, we can't look at course history, but we can look at U.S. Open history. The USGA typically sets up these courses to have very difficult conditions regardless of the location. Strokes gained off the tee is typically, pretty important as well, because you either need to hit the fairways, or you need to really be bombing it so that you can club down a little bit and use your wedges compared to the shorter hitters that are hitting the fairways even. Not everyone's going to be hitting the fairways every single time, right? So if you can get a little bit of advantage off the tee with your distance, you're going to be able to use those wedges into the greens rather than these short hitters. So again, it's not the same every single year, of course, and this one's a little bit different since it's a shorter course compared to the last few events. But I do think U.S. Open history is something that you should target this week. First off, Brooks Koepka leads the way within U.S. Open history. He has 2 wins that came back-to-back again in 2017 and 2018. He's made 7 out of 8 cuts here. He has a second, a T4, and a T4 as well, in addition to his 2 wins. So he leads the way as far as event history goes. Xander Schauffele is second on my list here. He's 5 for 5 for made cuts. He probably should be first, but he doesn't have a win, so it's hard to put someone who hasn't won. That's the top spot here, in event history. But He's 5 for 5 and made cuts, and all 5 of those have been 7th place or better, which is pretty insane. Obviously, that's a stat that can't always. He's not going to be like that for the rest of his career, right? But pretty safe bet probably to land inside the top 20, if not the top 10. DFS, he's going to be very chalky, of course. He's probably a great cash play. You're just going to have, kind of have to make some decisions on ownership this week. I do think there's some great plays that are going to be highly owned, such as Xander, for example, but you can't be fitting in Xander, Sung Jae, Will Zalatoris, other chalky guys all in one lineup, because we all know that's not always going to, cash, let alone, of course, win a GPP. So Louis Oosthuizen, he is going to be third on my list here, and I will let you read the rest of them on my article again on Fantasy Points. Louis is 9 for 12 and made cuts in U.S. Opens. His best finishes are second, a T2, a third, a T7, and a T9. So really strong for Louis in U.S. Opens. He's actually going to be relatively low owned, as well as Brooks Koepka too. The Brooks one I understand, because he really hasn't been playing great golf. Louis, he's much cheaper than Brooks. I think he's $1,000 cheaper on DraftKings. He wasn't too bad. I believe he had a strong showing at the PGA Championship. I'm not going to pull that up right now, but he also, I think he was 10th in the Live, golf event last week. So it's not like he hasn't been playing since then either. So don't mind Louis this week. I think he'll be overlooked just because he's, I think, the same price as Sungjae, if not a couple $100 difference. But I do like Louis this week just because of his U.S. Open history. I don't think Louis wakes up and gets excited for the 3M Open and the John Deere Classic and those minor PGA Tour events. Of course, he's going to the Live Tour right now, but it's clear in his major, championship history, he might not admit it like Brooks does, but he's much more motivated to do well in these majors than Brooks is. Or than he is, for Brooks is clearly motivated to do well. Louis is motivated than he is, or more motivated than he is for other typical, events, right? I think he wants that money, and I think that's clear with his decision to go to the Live. Again, other U.S. Open course history options or event history, again, you can see on my article. That's on my Twitter, as well as Fantasy Points. DFS ownership, just run through them quick. Sungjae, Rory, Xander, Shane Lowry, Will Zalatoris. Those are right now the top 5 highest owned. That could have changed too since the last time I checked it, but I would expect all 5 of those guys to come within 15% ownership or higher. There's always someone that just squeezes above 20 to 25% each week. I could see it being Sungjae this week, because everyone's tweeted about him. Everyone's talked about how great of a play he is. Of course, I definitely agree he is. He's priced way too low. I don't know why he's this low either. I guess we haven't been seeing him as much as we typically do with Sungjae, but normally he's priced at least 8,500 or higher, if not, near the 10,000s in a, crappy PGA Tour event. So his ownership makes sense. It's just, I think there's great options around him too. Like I said, Louis, for example, there's some really good options in the 7K range. I'll highlight a couple here at the end of the show. So that's DFS ownership. And that's really, I guess, all I got besides these DFS targets. If you have any questions, you can highlight it, or you can talk about it, in the YouTube chat here. You can ask me in the YouTube chat, reach out to me on Twitter, of course. We went through the course. We went through a hole-by-hole breakdown, talked about tournament history a little bit. I do think that's something to look at, of course, this year. Let's talk about some DFS plays. So I talked about Zalatoris in my article. His U.S. Open history isn't the greatest. He's, out of all of his starts in major championships, this one's been his worst likely, but he does actually have a T6 in 2020, so it's not like he's been terrible in these events, but he's really playing in his best golf right now. I know this isn't his peak, of course, right, but he's playing really solid golf. He's 7 for 9 for made cuts, he's 6 of 8 for made cuts in major championships. And again, I talked about it in my article. That's very similar to Mr. Scotty Scheffler, who is world number 1 right now. And I would not be surprised if, Zalatoris might not win the U.S. Open, right, for his first event. I wouldn't be shocked if he had a top 5 finish, though, right? But I think whenever he does, you know, whatever you want to call it, pull the cat out of the bag or whatever it's called, right? Whenever he wins that first PGA Tour event, he is going to go on a run. Very similar to Scheffler, in my opinion. I just think he needs that little bit extra confidence from winning that you get, right? Like he finally made it. And I don't think he's just going to feel like he's made it once he gets that little taste of victory. I do think he's very motivated to be, he cares about his legacy, right? He's a he just wants to do well, right? Of course, all these guys do, but I do think he's going to have a similar run to Scheffler. He's not just going to win one and not win again, like a Finau, for example, for a while, or a Xander for a while, right? I think he's going to go on a Scheffler type run just because he's contended in so many of these major championships. He's got a bunch of top 10 finishes here, a bunch of top 5s as well. He's 5 for 7 and made cuts in majors again. He's finished inside the top 8 each time that he saw the weekend. So out of those 5 made cuts, 5 for 7, he saw the weekend each time. He finished inside the top 10 each time, top 8. So pretty solid results in majors for Zalatoris. Otherwise, I really love the 8K range this week. I know they're starting to gain some ownership, but there's really a lot of great plays within this range. A lot of plays with high upside that I would not be shocked to see finish inside the top 5, top 10, top 20, of course, either. If you're playing cash this week, I don't think it's a bad idea to fit like 3 or 4 of these guys in your lineup. You could probably start at the top, pick like a Scheffler or Justin Thomas, for example, and then add in 2 or 3 of these guys too, and then kind of build in or add some cheap guys after that too. So 8K range is absolutely loaded. Neiman, Cam Young, both those guys have been contending in a lot of events this year. Brooks Koepka, talked about him before. He's probably the top dog when it comes to U.S. Open course, or keep doing that, event history, excuse me. Would not shock me to see him, win the event, pull out a top 5 out of his butt, right? Because he hasn't been playing great recently, but these U.S. Opens, he just gets up for more than any other event. Billy Horschel, we saw him a couple weeks ago. He won at Muirfield Village. It also had small greens. It had long, rough, kind of narrow fairways as well. So similar course. Horschel, wasn't playing amazing before that, but clearly must be in good form if he's going to win at a course like that. So don't mind him at, I believe, 8,600. Matt Fitzpatrick is the only golfer with a win on this course. He ranks really highly in every stat that I looked at that is needed to do well here. Daniel Berger has great results in this event as well. I think he's 5 for 6 in made cuts. He also ranks very highly in models. Sam Burns, I think he's like high risk, high reward too. It would not shock me to see Sam Burns miss the cut here. I don't know what it is. My thing with Burns, he's clearly proved me wrong because he's won multiple events here this season, and I'm on the Burns train too. So, but I used to think that he couldn't really play in big boy golf courses, but again, he's proved me wrong. But he doesn't have great U.S. Open course history. I could literally see him winning this event. I could also see him, missing the cut too. So, kind of a high risk, high reward play there. I wouldn't really consider him in cash, but I do think he's a good play. Tony Finau is fresh off of a great weekend in Canada. He's been trending upward recently too. I know he's getting ownership now, but again, he's been like trending upward. What I mean by that is like it's just been a gradual process up, in my opinion. So maybe that he finally tees it off this week, ties it off, and gets a major championship. Probably not, right? But I think he's a great cash play. I can easily see him finishing inside the top 20 with his form. All of these guys, really. Max Homa won the Wells Fargo Championship just over a month ago. It's located not too far away from Boston here, so he has a win in this location or this area of the country. He played well at the PGA Championship. He made the cut at the Masters too. So starting to play well in actual, real golf course real events, right? I know that's kind of a joke with him, but he's really playing great golf, and he had a great showing at the Memorial as well. And then last thing here, Hatton, probably my least favorite play out of this 8K range. But if you're looking for a very high leverage play, he's probably going to be sub 5% ownership. Hatton's probably the way to go there. So I'm probably looking more at a balanced build this week, looking at this 8K range quite a bit. Outside of Koepka and Hatton, I really, again, probably looking to use 3 of these guys in lineups, if not 4, really balance it out. Um, that's just my personal strategy this week. These guys are in the best form, of their careers, a lot of them, and they're arguably playing better than some of the guys that are priced higher than them, like Max Homa, Sam Burns, Fitzpatrick. Like, I love Victor Hovland, but they're all playing better than him right now. Like, Morikawa hasn't had great results. I know he can easily go out here and win, right? But like, those 3 guys are playing better than Morikawa right now. Cam Smith's been really up and down. I'm kind of nervous about him on this course just because he's a little weary off the tee. So, like, there's a strong argument that these 8K guys could be priced above some of those 9 upper 10 or lower 10K guys, not because not because they have higher upside, but because they've just been playing better over the last month or so. And I know we can't, price Morikawa and Hovland down in the 8K range, right? But, do you really think they've been playing better than these guys? I don't know. So that's just my opinion this week. Other guys I like, Rory and Justin Thomas. That's the chalk picks of the week, right? But they've been very consistent over the last, really since the Masters. That's kind of what I've been looking at. Jordan Spieth, his putting's been lacking, right? But he actually ranks really high in putting from 10 to 15 feet, which I do think will be important. His tee to green stats are one of the best of his career. It kind of gets back to his prime or his peak back in 2015, 2016, right? Cory Connors, he has great off the tee stats. He also ranks highly in around the green stats. He's been trending upwards as well. He had a great Sunday at the Canadian Open. He lost in the semis here in the same year that Matt Fitzpatrick won the amateur. And then Aaron Wise, been playing well, has the ball striking to do well here. I don't know if putting is going to be the most important here because you're not going to have to 3-putt. You're going to scramble a lot. Again, I think putting from like 5 to 15 feet is going to be much more important than your typical, lag putting or 3-putt avoidance, that kind of stuff. So those are some DFS plays I like. Went through the whole course. Hopefully you got something from that breakdown. I really advise you again to look at the US Open course breakdown up on their website. If you have any questions, you can, of course, reach out to me on Twitter. You can join the Fantasy Points PGA group, of course. Use that code VANESS 22. That's VANNESS 22. That'll help you get a nice little discount on a package. Lots of great content, again, pushing out from the PGA team at Fantasy Points. And join that Discord. We're trying to get that moving. I need to definitely, hit it up Wednesday nights. I think there's going to be a lot of great content here, in this final couple of months. I can't believe that this is the 3rd major now, and we are, nearing, the last couple of months of the PGA Tour season. It feels like Cam Smith just won the Tournament of Champions not too long ago. So that does it for the early tee time live stream. Again, we are presented by Fantasy Points. Thanks for watching today. I really appreciate everyone's time. Good luck this week, everybody. We will see you all next week. I'm not entirely sure what it's going to be the Travelers, excuse me. So I will head to Connecticut next week. So I haven't looked past the US Open at all. So again, thanks for watching. See you all next week, and good luck, everybody.